So this video covers some of the ideas I've been batting around regarding a theme configuration PHP file. Um, the idea would be when you set up the child theme would have a template configuration file, and we'd have like a checklist whenever we set up a new site. Um, so instead of going to the bridge theme settings and setting everything there, we would have our settings in PHP. We can probably build this out into an administration screen at some point. Most of these things could have hooks so that we could even not have to change the theme code. We could just add the visual interface. But it might help us get off the ground and maybe work out some of the bugs without as much time invested by using a PHP configuration file. And if that works out, maybe we'll stick with that. Generally speaking, database access is really quick, but it's even quicker to not do database access. And some of these things wouldn't be, well, they'd be feasible, but some of it would be more difficult. So the idea would be when you set up a new site, you'd come into a file like this, and you'd have a section with features. So this would be an expanding list based on things we added. So, if you're using a portfolio, you would just enable the portfolio feature. If you're using testimonials, same thing there. If you want to disable comments, that was one idea I had, was the disable comments plugin that we use is really small, and it doesn't really update very often because there's no real changes to it. I'd like to take some of that functionality and just build it into the theme so that it's one less plugin activation, one less thing to ask about updates. In the rare case that they do happen, one less thing on the plugin screen. Probably not, it's not going to be a major source of load time improvement, but some. So you would kind of come in here and you could either change these from true to false or comment them out if they're not being used. And the idea would be, by enabling the portfolio feature, this would add the custom post type. It would add whatever kind of administration customization we needed, if any, and turning it off would likewise hide any of that. So like Bridge has testimonials whether you use them or not. It has a few other things whether you use them or not. And so the hope is to have this one switch in the configuration file so it's just part of the setup, and let it do that. Down here, I kind of had a hook going for setting up Google Fonts, things to load from Google Fonts. And the idea would be that, unlike Bridge, which has some hard-coded things, and then it's determined by what's in the administration screen using drop-down selectors, you would just tell it. And I don't know if we would integrate it enough that you would be able to just say Open Sans, or if you would have to put the URL. You get the URL out of Google Fonts and just paste it here. Maybe start with the URL and then improve it later. I don't know how often the directory really changes, so we might be able to just we could probably steal the list of fonts from another plugin, or if assuming it's not somewhere easily accessible already. So the idea would be to just alter the list and load up the fonts we need. It's very simple PHP. You would just add a few more lines if there was, if we also used Lato, you would just add that in, and that would take care of adding it to the correct place in the header. Okay, so for header and footer, I had a couple things I wanted to look at, a couple scenarios, I should say. So one is a scenario where we have these predefined header types. So, this would correspond to a template file in the base directory, and the parent directory, I should say. And, we can have a descriptive name here: centered logo, centered menu, left logo, right menu, right logo, left menu. The problem is there's a lot of variations, but we should be able to come up with a handful of commonly used ones. The next scenario would be if we had our own. We might just return the name of our own header. So we can put that in, we can design a header, and we can put that, maybe you take the center logo, center menu, copy the contents into the child directory, and then just pass the name of the file you added to the child theme. and it uses that. So that way you can take one that's already existing and you can tweak it. Um, what I kind of like the idea of doing, and I'm still batting this around because it's on how much it adds, but I kind of like the idea of mimicking Bootstrap's layout options, or not layout, but grid options into a couple classes. And I wrote some sample code here just to kind of give an idea of what I'm thinking. So basically, we hook the same thing, but we return a class we've written. So this is something we could very easily document how to make, but it should, I mean, it should be particularly recognizable to Jeff, and it wouldn't be hard to explain what's going on here, and give, have a page somewhere with examples of how to use this. But basically, what I've imagined here is that we have a Bootstrap renderer system, and so this is basically something I've set up to represent a header. And the idea here is that just like, in fact, you can visualize this like Visual Composer, right? Visual Composer has rows and then columns, and this has the exact same structure to it. So this is PHP building a layout, and the idea would be, and I haven't written any of this support code yet, but the idea would be we could define some of these concepts and have some elements that do common things, like Lego pieces. So in this case, what I'm imagining is I'm adding a row, and I'm adding a column to that, and call 12. Most grid systems, not all, but Bootstrap among them, uses a 12 column system. So what I'm saying here is make a column with some ID, make it the full width of the page, and then as its contents, add a Bootstrap element called image, and then I'm just imagining we have a class that pulls the whatever logo we set, that we probably would set in the administration area. So you can picture, you have a row and you have a column that's filling the whole width of the page, and then we have an image, and it gets pulled from the logo. So this is actually center logo, center menu. Well, kind of. I'll mention that in a sec, but so that would add a row that has the logo, and then we add a new row, and this is an example of doing with multiple columns. So in this case, I have two 6-column layouts. So each one of these would be half the page width, and one has a boot. So basically, I or Jeff or someone, we would put the time in and make these elements. So we would make a menu element, and the idea is here you pass in the name of the menu you want. What I'm really kind of curious about is this can probably also take care of registering the menu. So by writing the header, if we do this right, we can potentially have it actually take care of registering this menu for us. So one place it kind of gets defined and then it's set up. Likewise for the widget area. So in the second column, I have a second half page width thing, and I'm imagining we have a widget area Bootstrap elements. So this should create a, if we implemented all of this, the idea would be to create a logo in the center and the middle, and then the left half of the page has the menu that's configurable in the WordPress admin, and then the right half of the screen would have a widget area. Again, the idea would be hopefully this will define that this widget area exists. And so when you go into Appearance Widgets, you see menu widgets, and it all makes sense. And you can, so this would be all you would have to write. Like each time you made a header, this is all you'd have to write. These elements are kind of the key to it all, and those would get written once and tested and verified that they work, and hopefully become a reliable backbone. So there is, if this works the way I just described, there is some value there, not just abstracting the HTML structure to PHP. It can be useful, but it's not, since we all know HTML, it's not a big deal. But I am really liking the idea of being able to just say, insert a menu named a main menu, and then kind of instantly when I go to set up, or when I go into the WordPress admin, that menu appears. And if I change the header, we can, if you see, if we use consistent names across all of our templates, see, like the templates could use this too, but if we use consistent names, then you can switch templates without breaking anything. But likewise, if you switch to a template that doesn't have menu widgets, it would just unregister the, it would no longer register the widget area. So the footer is kind of the same exact three examples. It's predefined templates, custom template that you place in the child theme, and a custom footer. Here I have an example where I have added a single row that has a 3-column row, so that's 25% of the page, 50% of the page, and then 25% of the page, just as a random layout, and actually defines 3 different widget areas. So this is probably pretty similar to how we do a lot of things now. But you'd be able, so if you wanted to change this to have 2 equal width columns, you could just erase one of these and change the other one to be 6. Yeah. Oh, and then a second row I've added here with as a copyright element, full width. I guess the only thing I don't really have going here is the alignment, but not a big deal. And yeah, so this is just a full width element that just displays text. And when you initialize it like this, you tell it what text, and here's that made up site settings. Again, this would really be a function. And that would pull a site setting with the copyright text from the from wherever the site settings are stored, probably the WordPress probably somewhere in the WordPress options page that we set up. So yeah, that's obviously not everything, but it's kind of the major pieces. I'm curious what people think of this. Does it? We'd probably be expanding this collection of elements for quite a while. I'm sure there's going to be a handful we use all the time, and then a couple more obscure ones. My hesitation is, does this get in the way of when we want to do something weird? If we want to put something we haven't anticipated. But I think at that point, that's why I made sure I didn't do this in a vacuum. There's also the other simple example, which is just take the predefined template that matches best, copy it into the child theme, and make that, with your customizations, the setup. So yeah, so again, this is just part of a few videos I'll probably make, and yeah, curious to hear feedback.